Hello, my name is Jessica, and I never thought I would experience something that would change my life forever. But here I am writing this for you because I feel compelled to share what happened to me. I died. I made it through, and what I saw on the other side was something I never could have expected. I met Jesus, and he showed me something about Black people that completely shocked me. It wasn't just a vision, it was a revelation. I'm still trying to process it, but one thing I know for sure, it needs to be told. It was just an ordinary day. Or at least, that's what I thought. I woke up early, made myself a cup of coffee as usual, and went through my morning routine like I always did. Nothing seemed out of place, but something was different, and I had no idea that in just a few hours, my entire life would take a turn I could never have imagined. I was driving to work, just like every weekday morning. The sky was overcast and the air felt thick, almost as if the whole world was trying to tell me something. But I wasn't paying attention. My mind was occupied with bills, work, and all the things that had been stressing me out lately. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp pain shot through my chest. It wasn't like anything I had ever felt before. Intense, overwhelming, terrifying. I tried to breathe, but no air would come in. My vision blurred, and suddenly everything around me seemed to slow down. The cars, the buildings, even the people on the sidewalk. It was as if the world had shifted into slow motion. I don't remember exactly when I lost control of the wheel, but I do remember the screeching tires and the horrifying crash that followed. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the sidewalk, staring up at the sky. I could hear voices, sirens in the distance, people shouting, but none of it felt real. As I lay there, something strange happened. The pain started to fade, and an eerie sense of calm washed over me. It was as if every worry, every fear, every bit of stress I had been carrying simply melted away. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't even sure if I was still alive. That's when I realized I was dying. At first, I didn't understand what was happening. Just moments ago, I had been lying on the sidewalk, feeling my body grow weaker. And then suddenly I was floating above it. I could see everything. The paramedics rushing toward me, a woman crying nearby, my own body lying motionless on the ground. But I felt no attachment to it. No fear, no panic, just a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching a movie. I tried to speak, to call out to the people below, but no sound came out. I felt weightless, drifting farther and farther away. And then I sensed something pulling me, not physically, but spiritually, as if an invisible force was guiding me upward. Then just as I was about to step into the light, I heard a voice. It wasn't loud, but it was powerful, echoing deep within my soul. It's not your time. The voice was familiar, yet I couldn't quite place it. And then everything around me shifted. Suddenly, I found myself standing in a place I couldn't quite describe. It wasn't Earth, yet it didn't feel completely foreign either. It was like a waiting space between two worlds, and that's when I saw him. The moment I stepped into the light, everything changed. I was no longer floating, no longer just an observer. I was there in a place that felt both familiar and foreign. It was bright, but not in a way that hurt my eyes. The air was thick with warmth, but not the kind that made you sweat. It was comfort itself, an overwhelming presence so strong I could feel it wrapping around me like a gentle embrace. In front of me stretched a tunnel, reaching endlessly into the distance. It wasn't made of brick or stone, but of radiant, pure light. It pulsed with life, almost as if it were breathing. There was no doubt in my mind, I was crossing over. As I took a step forward, I noticed something incredible. The tunnel wasn't empty. On either side, figures stood watching me, their forms shimmering like waves of energy. I couldn't make out their faces, but I knew they were souls, those who had crossed over before me. Some felt familiar, as if I had known them in another life, while others were complete strangers. They didn't speak, yet I could hear them, not with my ears, but with my soul. They welcomed me, comforted me, letting me know that I was safe. It was the most beautiful feeling I had ever experienced. I kept moving forward, deeper into the tunnel. With every step, I felt lighter, as if every burden I had ever carried in my earthly life was being lifted away. And then, at the end of the tunnel, I saw him. Standing there at the very edge of the light was a figure unlike anyone I had ever seen before. He radiated light, not just around him, but from within him. His presence was overwhelming. Love, peace, power, everything was wrapped into one. I knew without a doubt that I was standing before Jesus. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. All I could do was feel, and what I felt was beyond words. He looked at me, and in that single gaze, I saw my entire life flash before my eyes. Every moment, every decision, every mistake, every act of kindness, all of it laid bare before him. But in his eyes, there was no judgment, only understanding. Then he spoke, his voice like thunder and a whisper at the same time. "You are not here by accident, Jessica." I wanted to ask him why I was there, what was happening, but before I could, he raised his hand, and suddenly everything changed. I was no longer standing in the tunnel. I was somewhere else, somewhere I had never seen before, yet somehow felt deeply connected to. And that was when he showed me the truth about Black people, a truth that would change the way I saw the world forever. I stood there, frozen in awe, as Jesus reached out his hand toward me. His eyes held a depth of understanding beyond my comprehension. And in that moment, I knew I was about to witness something profound, something the world had kept hidden for far too long. Without a word, everything around me shifted. The tunnel disappeared, and I found myself standing in an open, endless space. It was neither earth nor heaven. It was something in between, a place where sacred truths were revealed. Before my eyes, images began to take shape, like moving paintings woven from pure energy. The first thing I saw was Africa, vast, beautiful, glowing with golden light. I saw ancient cities, powerful civilizations, and people filled with wisdom, resilience, and spiritual strength. They were not broken. They were not weak. They were chosen. Jesus spoke, and his voice echoed deep within my soul. He said the world had lied about them. They were not what they had been led to believe. They were given gifts, power, knowledge, things that many had tried to erase. The vision shifted again. I saw chains, ships, people being taken from their homeland. I saw suffering, pain, generations being told they were less than what they truly were. And then, I saw something even more shocking. I saw spiritual forces working in the shadows, deliberately suppressing the truth. Jesus turned to me and continued, "The oppression was never just physical, it was spiritual. Because if they knew who they truly were, the world would change." My heart pounded. This wasn't just history. This was a spiritual battle that had been waged for centuries. The deception ran deep, and most of the world had no idea. But then, the vision shifted again. I saw the present day, people waking up, realizing their worth, reclaiming their power. Those who had been told they were nothing were beginning to remember who they truly were. Jesus smiled. The time of revelation has begun. They would rise again. Tears filled my eyes. I had never felt anything so deeply. The truth had been hidden, but not forever. It was coming to light. The visions did not stop. Jesus raised his hand once more, and I was pulled deeper into the revelation. I saw a time long before slavery, before colonization, before oppression. I saw a world where Black people held a powerful spiritual knowledge beyond words. They understood the connection between heaven and earth, between spirit and the material world. They carried divine wisdom, passed down from generation to generation. I saw prophets, leaders, warriors, men and women who spoke directly with God. They didn't need an intermediary. They could speak to heaven themselves. Jesus looked at me, his expression filled with both sorrow and love. He said, "This is why they became a target, because those who ruled the world feared those who carried divine wisdom." My mind was racing. Now everything made sense. The efforts to erase their culture, their faith, their identity. It was never just about control. It was about severing their connection to the truth. But as I watched, I saw something unbelievable. Even under oppression, after generations of being told they were nothing, Their spirit never broke. Their power never left them. They carried something that could not be destroyed. Jesus continued, and that is why they must remember. In that moment, I understood. This was never about hatred. It was never about division. It was about restoration. The world had been built on lies, but the truth was rising. The vision shifted once more. People from every nation, especially Black people, were rising, realizing who they truly were. I saw them breaking free from spiritual chains, reclaiming their divine power. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. The world had tried to erase them, but they were stepping into the truth. And as they did, something miraculous happened. The world itself began to change. Jesus turned to me once more. He said, "The prophecy is unfolding. They will lead the world into a new era of spiritual awakening." I gasped. Was this why I was shown all of this? Was I meant to share this message? Yes, Jesus answered, reading my thoughts. You must tell them. The world is changing, and they need to know the truth. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by what I had just witnessed. This wasn't just about race. This was about identity, purpose, and destiny. This wasn't about one group being greater than another. It was about restoring balance, revealing a truth that had been hidden for centuries. They were chosen, Jesus said, but so were many others. It is time for all my children to remember who they are. Suddenly, everything around me began to fade. The light, the visions, even Jesus himself. I felt myself being pulled back, as if some invisible force was pulling me away from heaven. No, I cried out, I don't want to go back. Jesus smiled, but there was something serious in his eyes. You must, he said. The world needs you to speak. I wanted to protest, but before I could resist, a jolt of energy surged through me. I gasped. My eyes flew open. I was back. The beeping of hospital machines surrounded me. Nurses and doctors rushed to my side. I could feel my heart pounding, my lungs struggling to take in air. I was alive, but I was no longer the person who had left. I had seen things that changed me forever. I had spoken to Jesus. I had seen the truth, and I knew my life would never be the same again. As I woke up in the hospital, everything felt different. The air felt heavier. The lights were too bright. The voices around me were too loud. I was still alive, but I didn't feel like the same person who had left that day. The doctors and nurses were talking, but their voices sounded distant, like echoes of a reality I could barely grasp. My family was there too, crying, holding my hands, thanking God that I had survived. But I couldn't focus on any of it. My mind was still elsewhere, still replaying everything I had seen. I had spoken to Jesus. I had been shown the truth, and now I had returned to a world that had never known it. For days, I barely spoke. I could see the worry in my family's eyes, the way they whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. I was still alive, but I didn't feel like the same person who had left that day. The doctors and nurses were talking, but their voices sounded distant, like echoes of a reality I could barely grasp. My family was there too, crying, holding my hands, thanking God that I had survived. But I couldn't focus on any of it. My mind was still elsewhere, still replaying everything I had seen. I had spoken to Jesus. I had been shown the truth, and now I had returned to a world that had never known it. For days, I barely spoke. I could see the worry in my family's eyes, the way they whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. I spun around, but no one was there. Yet deep in my soul, I knew what it meant. I couldn't keep this to myself. I had to tell people. But where would I begin? The first revelation, the message, began to unfold. The first time I tried to talk about my experience, I was met with skepticism. I gathered my closest friends and family, determined to share what I had seen, what Jesus had shown me about Black people and their hidden spiritual power. But as soon as I began speaking, I could see the doubt in their eyes. You just had an accident, Jessica, my sister said gently. Maybe your mind is just... No, I interrupted. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't my imagination. It was real. I continued telling them everything. The tunnel, my encounter with Jesus, the revelation about Black people, and their divine connection. I spoke with passion, with absolute conviction, hoping that something in my words would reach them. But when I finished, there was only silence. Then my best friend cleared her throat and gave me a hesitant smile. "Well, that's interesting," she said hesitantly. "I mean, maybe it's symbolic, you know? Maybe your mind is just processing everything that's happening in the world." I felt my heart sink. They didn't believe me. Not really. I tried again with others. Church members, acquaintances, even strangers online. But time and time again, I was met with the same reactions. Some dismissed it as a hallucination. Others told me to keep it to myself. And some even got angry, accusing me of pushing an agenda. It was frustrating, painful. I had received this message for a reason, yet no one wanted to hear it. Then one night, as I sat alone, wondering if I should stop trying, I heard that voice again. And I knew I couldn't give up. The more I spoke, the more resistance I faced. It was no longer just skepticism. Things started happening that I couldn't explain. My phone would randomly shut off while I was writing about my experience. Videos I recorded about my NDE would mysteriously disappear. Strange calls from unknown numbers flooded my phone, breathing on the other end but no words. At first I brushed it off as paranoia, but then one night, something happened that I couldn't ignore. I had just finished recording a message about my experience, speaking about the spiritual oppression of Black people for centuries, and was about to upload it when my computer screen flickered. Then the entire video vanished, just like that. I tried to recover it, but it was gone. Not in the trash, not saved anywhere, just completely erased. A chill ran down my spine. I looked around my apartment, suddenly feeling like I wasn't alone. That's when I saw it, a shadow moving across the wall of my living room. I gasped, whipping around, but there was no one there. "Keep speaking," the voice whispered again. But this time it felt closer, almost urgent. That was when I knew I was facing something far greater than I had realized. This wasn't just about sharing a story. This was a spiritual battle, and whatever forces were trying to keep this truth hidden, they were not pleased. I had a choice to make. I could stop. I could let doubt, fear, and resistance silence me. I could pretend none of this had ever happened, go back to my normal life, and never speak of it again. Or I could fight. I could keep sharing the message. No matter the cost, no matter who doubted me, no matter what tried to stop me. I thought back to that moment with Jesus, the way he looked at me as he revealed the truth about Black people. He chose me to see this for a reason, and if I turned away now, I would be turning my back on him. So I made my decision. I started writing, speaking, sharing my experience with anyone who would listen. I didn't care if people laughed. I didn't care if they doubted me. I didn't care if strange things kept happening around me, because I knew the truth, and the truth had to be spoken. So if you're reading this right now, it means that despite everything, I kept going. And I need you to do something for me. Share this message, because this isn't just about me. This is about all of us. The world is awakening, the truth is being revealed, and it is time for everyone, especially Black people, to remember who they truly are. This is just the beginning. At first, it felt like I was shouting into the void. No matter how passionately I spoke, no matter how deeply I believed in the message Jesus had shown me, people refused to listen. But then something changed. One day I shared my testimony online, just as I had done many times before. But this time it spread like wildfire. I didn't know what made this post different. The world is awakening, the truth is being revealed, and it is time for everyone, especially Black people, to remember who they truly are. This is just the beginning. At first, it felt like I was shouting into the void. No matter how passionately I spoke, no matter how deeply I believed in the message Jesus had shown me, people refused to listen. But then something changed. One day I shared my testimony online, just as I had done many times before. But this time it spread like wildfire. I didn't know what made this post different. Tell me more. These were the messages I received. Messages from people who were beginning to wake up. And that was when I realized this wasn't about convincing the whole world at once. It was about planting seeds. Not everyone would believe right away. Some would never believe at all. But those who were ready, they were listening. The revelation that Jesus had shown me was no longer just my burden to carry. Others were feeling it, seeing it, recognizing the truth. And as more people began to speak out, something incredible happened. Connections started forming. Scholars, historians, spiritual leaders, and even those who never believed in God before began coming together. The visions I had seen, others had seen pieces of them too. We had each been given fragments of the truth, and now we were piecing them together. The more the message spread, the stronger the resistance became. It wasn't just skeptics anymore. Something darker was fighting against me, against us. I started receiving threats, not just from random trolls online, but from people who seemed to know things about me, things they had no way of knowing. My emails were hacked, my videos were taken down. My posts would disappear without warning. One night I received an anonymous message. "Stop speaking. This is bigger than you understand." A chill ran down my spine. I had read about spiritual warfare before, but now I was living it. Just as Black people have been spiritually oppressed for centuries, forces were now working relentlessly to silence the truth. This wasn't just about history. This wasn't just about injustice. This was a battle for souls, and it was happening right now. The forces that enslaved, erased, and manipulated Black history were not human. They were spiritual entities. And now that the truth was coming to light, they were fighting back harder than ever. One night, I woke up to find my apartment engulfed in the densest darkness I had ever felt. It wasn't just the absence of light, it was something else, a presence, a force. And then I saw it. A shadow stood at the foot of my bed. It didn't move, it didn't speak. But I could feel its intent. It wanted me to stop. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. And then I remembered Jesus. I forced my lips to move and whispered the only thing I could. "In the name of Jesus, leave." Immediately the shadow vanished. The room felt lighter. The darkness shattered, and that was when I understood. This wasn't just about spreading a message, it was about fighting for the souls of millions. After everything I had experienced, meeting Jesus, seeing the truth about Black people, and facing spiritual attacks, I thought I had seen it all, but I was wrong. One night as I was deep in prayer, seeking guidance, something happened. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. My spirit felt as though it was being pulled into another realm, a place where time did not exist. And in this place, I was shown the future. I saw a great awakening, but I also saw a great war. Not just a war between nations, but a spiritual war. "In the name of Jesus, leave." Immediately the shadow vanished. The room felt lighter. The darkness shattered, and that was when I understood. This wasn't just about spreading a message, it was about fighting for the souls of millions. After everything I had experienced, meeting Jesus, seeing the truth about Black people, and facing spiritual attacks, I thought I had seen it all, but I was wrong. One night as I was deep in prayer, seeking guidance, something happened. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. My spirit felt as though it was being pulled into another realm, a place where time did not exist. And in this place, I was shown the future. I saw a great awakening, but I also saw a great war. Not just a war between nations, but a spiritual war. Then I saw something that made my heart stop. A wave of destruction unlike anything the world had ever seen. Floods, fires, and earthquakes in places where they had never happened before. I saw cities collapse, people running, the world crying out for help. I turned to Jesus, who stood beside me, and asked, "Why is this happening?" He looked at me, his face full of both sorrow and power. The world must be shaken before it can be restored. Then he showed me something else. After the case, after the suffering, after the destruction, a new world began to emerge. A world where people were no longer enslaved by lies. A world where the truth about who they are could no longer be hidden. "The final battle has begun," Jesus said, "but victory belongs to those who walk in truth." And just like that, I was back in my room, gasping for breath. My body trembled, my heart pounded. I had seen what was coming, and now I had no choice but to prepare. After that vision, I couldn't sit still. The weight of what I had witnessed was too heavy to ignore. The world was heading toward a spiritual war, and most people had no idea. They were still caught up in distractions, arguing over politics, chasing money, living in fear, while the real battle was happening in the unseen. I began to speak louder. I told people what I had seen, what Jesus had shown me. Some listened, but many did not. I realized something heartbreaking. Some people didn't want to wake up. They were too comfortable with the lies, too afraid of what the truth would cost them. But whether they believed it or not, the time was coming. The awakening was happening, and each person would have to make a choice. Would they fight for the truth or remain in the darkness? Jesus had warned me, not everyone would survive what was coming. Some will be consumed by fear. Some will give in to the lies. But those who stand firm in faith, those who embrace their divine power, they will rise as warriors. I don't know why Jesus chose me to deliver this message, but I know now that I cannot stop. The forces trying to silence me grow stronger, but so does my faith. If you are reading this, know that this is not a coincidence. You were meant to hear this. You were meant to wake up. And now the choice is in your hands. I don't know how many more times I will be able to speak before something tries to stop me again. But before I go, I need you to understand this. This is not just my story. This is yours. The truth is unfolding, whether the world is ready or not. The spiritual battle is happening and you have a role in it. Maybe you felt it, the sense that something in the world isn't right, that you were meant for something more. That's because you were. You are part of this awakening. But waking up is not easy. It requires courage. It requires faith. It requires you to step out of fear and into your divine power. Jesus did not show me these things so that I could keep them to myself. He showed me so that I could tell you. And now I ask you, will you accept the truth? Or will you turn away and pretend you never saw this? The world will try to distract you. The enemy will try to make you doubt. But deep down, your soul already knows the truth. This is your moment. Step into your power. Wake up. And when you do, help others awaken. Because once the veil is lifted, there is no turning back. The time has come. Choose wisely.